When checking out the reviews for this album from established media outlets on the internet, I noticed that there was a recurring chorus of, "It's better than you're expecting it to be." And I have to agree with that statement, but I would add that expectations should play a big part in how anyone listens to any posthumous release. For example, I am a Hendrix fan. I have no respect for the posthumous releases that were done without the Hendrix estate's consent, but I have much respect for the releases done with the estate's consent. But when I listen to a posthumous release from the Hendrix estate, I do not expect a cohesive album. I don't expect to hear new tracks that will be on a par with his greatest hits. I just hope that when the Hendrix estate scours the vaults of unreleased recordings, that they will be selective and choose only the best of these tracks, and that they will release them in the best presentation possible. And I think this expectation was met with Xscape, the second posthumous release from Michael Jackson. Now I should pause here and state that while I enjoy all of Michael's radio hits, and while I admire his vocal chops and his skills as an entertainer, not to mention the fact that he made some tremendously innovative music videos back in the 80s, I don't consider myself a serious Michael Jackson fan simply because I don't own any of his albums. At best, I'm a casual fan. A serious fan owns either all of or a good portion of an artist's albums and knows them well. I think that posthumous releases are for the serious fan. They have to be because, by and large, posthumous releases are the leftovers, demos, and unfinished tracks. They're usually the discards. But calling them discards or leftovers doesn't mean they're bad. If the songs on Xscape were bad, Michael Jackson would never have even let them get to the demo recording stage. In fact, the majority of these songs are good. Jackson was known for over-recording way more songs than he needed during the making of his albums, and then cherry-picking only the best of them. These tracks were set aside not because they were bad, but more than likely because they didn't fit in with the overall tone of the album that was being created at the time, or because the same musical ideas were being better mined in other recordings. Now, over the years, there have been a lot of people who have asked me, what does a producer do? There is no simple answer for that question, since a producer's role varies based on the artist they are producing. But I think that getting the deluxe edition of this release goes a long way in explaining this to some extent, because you get the 9 original demo versions of the songs featured on this album. By comparing them back to back, I think that even the casual listener can get a good idea of what a producer can sometimes bring to a project. Like I said before, I feel that posthumous albums are for the serious fans. When the Hendrix estate releases a posthumous album, they know their audience is not the casual fan. They know that radio is probably not going to play any tracks off the album. But Sony Records has made it clear that by their choice of producers, and by their instructions to give these recordings a modern update, that they are hoping for radio airplay and to catch the casual listeners as a result. This could have been a recipe for disaster. Thankfully, for Jackson fans, it's not. Part of the reason this album succeeds is that all the original demos are already strong enough on their own that Sony could have released them as is, and I think people would have bought them. The other reason is that all the producers involved did their absolute best to flesh out these demos, modernize them, make them accessible to radio, but also did their best to do nothing that could be considered to be out of character for Michael Jackson, and they also did their best to keep him as the front and center focus of these tracks as well. Lastly, one other factor that I think played into the success of this release is that all the producers involved worked very quickly. Now, I can't say that it was intentional or not, but I get the feeling that making them finish the tracks quickly kept them from second-guessing themselves and made them rely on their initial first instincts. And it feels like this brought out an immediacy and vitality to the tracks that otherwise might not have existed if they had spent too much time thinking about it or working on them. One of the standouts is the opener, Love Never Felt So Good. The original demo for this features Burt Bacharach on piano and was co-written by Jackson and Bacharach. I enjoy the original demo with just Burt and Michael and some finger snapping as much as I enjoy the modern updating of the song. On the track Loving You, producers Timbaland and Jerome J. Rock Harmon managed to not only improve on the demo, but make it feel more like a Michael Jackson song than the original. It's as if he was standing there in the studio with them, helping them work on it. On an interesting note to classic rock fans is the track A Place With No Name. The original demo reveals that Jackson originally sampled the rhythm guitar track of A Horse with No Name from the band America. Producer Stargate removes all trace of the original sampling, but you can hear it in the original recording. So you are not aware of its presence until Michael mirrors the la 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 sing-along from the original. Another thing I find interesting about this track is that since the original America track, A Horse with No Name, has a storytelling narrative, granted a psychedelic one, but a storytelling narrative nonetheless, Michael Jackson writes his lyrics for his, I don't want to say cover, but more of a transformative mashup as a straight-on storytelling narrative. And that's something I really haven't heard too much from him. And I think it's quite interesting to hear. Too bad he didn't do more of this. In fact, it's hard to believe that some of these tracks were cast-offs. The only track that I found to be unnecessary is the added additional rendition of Love Never Felt So Good, featuring a virtual duet with Justin Timberlake. Nothing against Timberlake, he's a powerhouse vocalist, but this version feels like its only reason for being is to get radio to play it. Besides this, I think there is plenty here for serious fans of Michael Jackson to enjoy, and I'm finding it more enjoyable with each listen. I also think that Sony Records needs to really thank the producers for the work that was done on these tracks, because they might just get that radio airplay that they are desiring. For Music Worth Buying, this is TJR. Please subscribe, and thanks for listening.